Following advice on the latest remodeling trends is actually just a sales pitch for fast fashion in your house, and that is not what you want. Just about every piece of advice you find online, on HGTV, in magazines, and from general contractors is wrong and has the potential to ruin your mid-century house. I'm not exaggerating. The home improvement industry exists to persuade you to change as much about your home as you can in every remodel. Every time they talk you into following a new trend, a countdown timer starts, and suddenly your on-trend remodel is about to become a dated remodel, and then one is hopelessly out of date. Who does this benefit? Not you, a homeowner trying to spend your money wisely and live your life in a house you like. It benefits the people who are selling you something. So let's avoid all of that advice. Your goal in a renovation is probably to fix what's broken, to make sure it looks a little better, and to suit it a bit more to the lifestyle you want to lead in the house. If that sounds right, you're going to need to go about planning your remodel in an entirely different way from the advice you find on the internet and on HGTV. Let's just put this myth out there right away, that you need to make big changes in order to see a big improvement in your home. It's not true. The scale and cost of your remodel are not necessarily related to how much you change about it. And in a mid-century home, the more you change, the more you're putting yourself on a trend hamster wheel, and the less you're taking advantage of the good design that was baked into your house in the first place. If you want help to plan a tailored, timeless remodel, one that's going to help your house feel more like a home you want to live in for a lifetime, keep listening. Because you live in a mid-century home, you can focus on a remodel that is based in your needs, repairing what needs to be repaired, and leaning into your style, and you can get amazing results for relatively small costs and small amounts of change if you plan it the right way. Let's talk about why there's so much bad advice out there. Like I said at the top, HGTV is all about driving sales. They're not speaking to you. They're not speaking to us at all. Most of the easy big transformation advice you're going to see online, on HGTV, etc., is talking to someone whose house lacks character and needs to put some in. So you might put in a shiplap wall, or add an accent, or make some big dramatic transformation because there's not a lot there to work with in the beginning. But a mid-century house has innate character, and so we're looking to put that back or play up what already exists. Plus, their business, whether you're talking to someone who's got a DIY YouTube channel or someone who has a big spread in a magazine, is selling the transformation. The bigger the change, the more impressive the work that the designer or the person who's giving you advice can take credit for. But you don't necessarily need a big transformation in your home. You just want it to work right, look right, and be properly maintained and repaired. The strategy that someone would follow if they lived in a house that had no character and they were trying to make something up and build it from scratch is completely different than the strategy you and I use when we make the right choices for our mid-century homes. This means there's so much good news for us as mid-century homeowners, because we don't need to create accent walls or put in fake materials to create character in the house. We just need to lean into the choices that already exist or that once existed in the house as we go along. A mid-century house is always going to shine brightest when it leans into its own era of origin, with as many stylish mid-mod design features as possible. Now, I am talking here about a house that still has a lot of its original features intact, and if yours doesn't, if someone came through and painted all the brick white and tore out the original kitchen and put in trendy bathrooms, even if that someone was you, there's hope, and I'm going to talk about that in my next video. But actually, the mid-century cornerstones that I'm about to recommend apply as much to someone who's putting back mid-century character as they do to someone who's trying to preserve or enhance it. More on that in a minute. I just want to underline again why trend chasing is the wrong idea for mid-century homeowners. You can see it at a glance when you walk into a house that was updated in an era of the past. An 80s remodel looks different from a 90s remodel, looks different from an early 2000s remodel, looks different from a recent flip, but none of them feel well suited to the house they are in. None of them feel organic or natural or right. They have that kind of uncanny valley quality that just doesn't work. You can't turn a mid-century house into a cottage. And if you're hoping to get a cottage, just choose one of the many charming 1930s cottages that exist and live in one of them. This is my advice to everyone else. You're watching this video because you like your mid-century house. Now, I'd like to argue that trend chasing is a bad idea for literally every homeowner. It's in no one's best interest to constantly think about what's on target for this year and will inevitably be out of style in 5 or 10 years. But let's focus right now on making right choices for mid-century houses. There are so many ways to go wrong with a mid-century house, and I hear these stories almost constantly. It's part of the hazard of doing business as an architect who focuses on mid-century houses. My Instagram DMs are flooded with people who are talking to me about the character that's lost, sometimes the mistakes they made themselves. I just had a conversation with a new client last week about the choices she made in her early homeowner enthusiasm 10 years ago, following the advice of, frankly, YouTube and a home advice blogger that I liked myself at the time, whose big move was go ahead and paint that thing white. Woodwork, paint it white. Brick, paint it white. And she did. Now she's laboriously unpainting her brick, and she's going to be so much better off for it because the dramatic transformation of slopping some white paint onto brick feels like a big move in the moment and then instantly diminishes the quality and character of the mid-century house. By the way, it is sometimes possible to roll back these mistakes directly, but ideally we don't make them in the first place. So that's what I hope to prevent with this video. Ultimately, making the right choices for your own home, resisting all of that powerful noise that's coming from your friends, your family, everything you read and see online, and the contractors you're eventually going to hire to do your house, is really difficult to resist, and the best way to do that is to have a really firm foundation of a plan for what you're going to do with your house, a mid-century master plan. And this is how I prepare designs for my clients. It's what I teach to my students inside of my homeowner design program, Ready to Remodel, and it's what I talk about on my podcast and in all of my online advice. Basically, going through the steps of the master plan method, starting from what matters most to you, getting confident in the details and the design and the background of your house so you can become a little bit of an expert, not necessarily on everything. So you can become an expert, not necessarily on everything home improvement, but on your home, and distilling your personal style so you know all of the material choices you're going to make are adding up. Then getting the opportunity to explore options and sort of Goldilocks yourself into the right solutions for your lifestyle, for your budget, for how much you want to take on right now. Going through that process will get you to a place where you do have the power to resist all of the advice that's out there. If you're looking for guidance to make that process happen, I would love to hold your hand and go on your remodeling journey with you, to be part of your mid-mod remod squad and share everything I know with you inside of my program, Ready to Remodel. You can learn all about that program right here, midmod-midwest.com/ready. Today, let's focus on what you can think about as you're making design choices for your mid-century home to resist the sort of trendy 2026 moves for a kitchen, for a bathroom, for the exterior of your house. When you're thinking about choices that are grounded in mid-century design, you're going to always want to make sure they come back to these 4 cornerstones. Leaning into asymmetry, the right mix of modern and organic materials, playful but simple shapes, and great flow between spaces. When you've got all 4 of those things going on in a room, or in a built-in, or in a product, you've made the right choice. So let's focus on each one of those a little bit more. Asymmetry is going to be so freeing. Your mid-century home is already asymmetrical. Odds are that every room has a different arrangement of doors, windows. There's not probably a place where you can have a bed flanked by sides and the windows all line up around it. There's probably not a place where you can stand and see that the entire house meets the street in an orderly, symmetrical way. Great mid-century design is about balance, not symmetry. So look for a high object to be matched by a long one, or for a bold color to be repeated somewhere else so your eye is moving around the room. Whenever you feel that center it and make it symmetrical urge, release it. You don't need to have symmetrical arrangements of pictures on your wall, and your addition to the house to make a little bit more living room space doesn't need to be symmetrical either. If you're placing a TV on a wall next to the hearth, by the way, TVs do not go above fireplaces. That's a whole different video. Think about how you can frame them each with built-ins or with other elements to make sure that they balance each other but don't match each other. Asymmetry basically always makes your design life easier. The next cornerstone of mid-century design is the right mix of materials. Mid-century houses are not about the most expensive thing or the most luxurious finish. They're about casual, playful, easy to clean, easy to live with materials. But they do have a combination of both some machined, sort of modernist, future space-age things and some organic, natural things. Almost in every room. Maybe less so in the bathroom, for example. You're going to find organic materials like wood grain, stone, brick, matched to modern materials, a plaster painted wall, formica, metal. Stainless steel is a perfect mid-century metal. When you see the search term mid-century online, you get a lot of rose gold and matte brushed brass. Matte brush is fine. That's okay. That's a mid-century material. But you can also go ahead and do shiny stainless, and that's perfectly mid-century era appropriate every single time. Now, the great news here is that it's going to help you steer clear from a lot of fussy materials. When people were putting in the trend of marble, backsplash, and countertop, they were not giving any thought to the fact that white marble takes a stain if you look at it cross-eyed. Going back another couple of years when everything was black granite, people spent so much time trying to keep their granite shiny and polished. A mid-century formica surface is very easy to keep clean and company ready, or just nice looking for yourself. Most mid-century materials are going to be characteristically easy to take care of and easy to clean. The great news here is that you don't have to aim towards the high end. Sure, you might go for vintage teak furniture, but you can also get almost as good a result out of plywood panel. Mid-century materials are casual, playful, and they always have a little bit of a mix in one room between machine, space-age finishes, and something that feels like it's got a little bit of that natural touch. The fourth cornerstone is simple shapes, and the shape of the materials you choose is just as important as what they are. A mid-century house has basically the simplest of shapes. You're not going to have complicated tall baseboards or crown molding in a mid-century room. The cabinet doors, certain sort of mid-century romantic, mid-century Hollywood style houses will have a little bit of detail on their built-ins, but for a modern choice, you're probably going to be going with a grain-matched slab front cabinet every single time. You don't need shaker cabinet doors or multi-pane windows or fluted light fixtures. Keep it simple is the name of the game. Focusing on sleek built-ins and minimalist light fixtures and hardware is going to actually rule out a lot of wrong choices and make your options simpler. The final hallmark cornerstone of mid-century design is flow between spaces. Now that might mean opening up a little bit of your floor plan, but you're not required to have a totally blown out open floor plan in your house if you don't want one. And most mid-century houses didn't have them either. They had some separation between the working spaces and the social spaces, but they did have great sight lines, great connections between inside and outside. You can make a relatively small living room feel bigger when it's connected by a glass wall of sliding doors to a patio outside. That's great when you can flow out to the patio space in nice weather, but even in the winter when you can just look out to an arrangement of snow-covered seats, you feel like your living space is a little bit more sizable. Flow between spaces lets you share space from a dining room with a couple of extra leaves into the living room when you've got a crowd for company, or have a smaller space for eating as a family or just doing puzzles on the table if you tend to eat in front of the TV like I do, and more space for seating arrangements. When you have a little bit of back and forth in your layout, you've got room to borrow space through a day or through a year for special occasions. Flow doesn't only happen in the floor plan. This circles us right back around to one of our earlier cornerstones, materials. Sometimes it's as important to have, for example, white soffits outside on the roof overhang and a white ceiling above so you can look and see the connection between inside and outside happening visually. Or to have a deck with a stain that's similar to the wood floor that creates a visual connection between two spaces. Remember, you're allowed to have a floor plan that's as open or closed as you want. If you want to hide clutter, you're allowed to block off working spaces, have more closed-in built-ins. You're not required to have open shelving in your kitchen, but you do want to hit the amount of connection and the connections between the important spaces in your house as hard as you can as you improve your layout to fit your own mid-century style. When you lean into the cornerstones of mid-century design, you'll be able to resist a lot of the trendy pressure that's coming at you every time you walk into a kitchen store, source a supply, or even just look on a modern website that's offering you remodeling product options. By the way, I've got a handy free guide that walks you through those four cornerstones and has some visual references. Grab that at midmod-midwest.com/cornerstones right here and keep those details top of mind as you plan. There's one trendy impulse that I want to warn you against most specifically. I already mentioned this earlier in the video, but I want to highlight again. Resist the impulse to do anything that's going to paint original mid-century materials white to get a big transformation moment. In fact, resist any advice at all from anyone that advises you to paint your original woodwork, stone, or brick white. That person doesn't have the best interests of your mid-century house at heart. Now, if you already did paint the woodwork, or the stone, or the brick in your house white, or maybe gray, or someone else did before you ever got the house yourself, or if you thought you'd do a quick bathroom refresh when you first moved in and it ended up looking really Home Depot in style and you hate it now, don't panic. There's still hope for you. Here's the good news. You can roll back the clock, and there's a silver lining to the loss of mid-century character, which means that you have a little bit more freedom to make bigger moves, to be bolder in changing up the layout than you might feel if you had original features you wanted to preserve. The process you're going to follow for putting back mid-century style is the same, whether it was lost in the 90s in a remodel, just a few years ago in a flip, or whether you yourself made some choices for the house that you no longer love. And I'm going to walk you through exactly how to make that happen step by step in the next video. Stay tuned.